one's about growth, specifically how communities are now key drivers of go to market success. Moderated by Hemant Kapoor, we have Josh from Gradual and Andrew from Werq AI. Together, they'll unpack how communities are helping brands launch faster, grow stronger, and build customer trust that lasts. Over to you, Hemant.
Thank you, Mehak. And hi, everyone. We just heard how AI strengthens human connection and how community drives business impact. Now, we bring those together because the best GTM teams invest in people, not just campaigns. Community is the new growth engine, and AI is powering it with insight, personalization, and measurable results. I am joined by two leaders who have seen this evolution firsthand, and it's my pleasure to introduce our first panelist, Andrew Mishalove. He's the head of revenue and growth at Werq AI. He's a human-first leader who has scaled customer and community programs across some of the fastest-growing SaaS companies. At Werq AI, he's using agentic AI to expand opportunity and rewrite the hiring experience in a way that empowers people, not replaces them. Andrew, welcome.
Thank you. Appreciate the opportunity to be here with you today.
Great. Joining him is Joshua Zerkel, the head of marketing and community-led growth at Gradual. With 2 decades of building global community programs at organizations like Asana and Evernote, Josh has helped industry-leading brands turn community engagement into measurable business outcomes. And guess what? He literally wrote the book on it, The Community Code. Josh, great to have you.
Thank you so much.
So Andrew, let's start with you. From your vantage point, how are communities becoming growth engines in the modern GTM playbook?
So, there's a lot of ways to answer this question, and I really like to look back at my experience in the space since about 2012. And, communities are no longer just sort of a nice to have with businesses. As they've evolved, they've really become these realistic kind of go-to-market signals. They provide lots of opportunity, lots of data, and signals from your users. So, the one thing that's really interesting is they are your most engaged customer base. So they're always going to provide you with the honest and sometimes the brutally honest and unfiltered customer truth. But that's good. I mean, you learn from feedback, and I always say that feedback is a gift. So that's one thing. I think in addition to that, they really do provide you with lots and lots of different signals, whether it's launch signals or potential churn signals, adoption signals, expansion signals. These are things that we'll hopefully be able to get into in a little bit more detail later on in the discussion. But they really truly become your early warning system. And like I said, they provide you with that real-time feedback and sort of the data that modern go-to-market teams really can't live without. So I'd like to give Josh a chance to also put in his thoughts, but those are just some of the simple and quick ways that you can think about communities as modern day go-to-market strategy.
Totally agree with you, Andrew. And Josh, coming to you, I think you've seen this evolution across different product categories. Why do you think communities have become so central to how organizations grow today? Your 2 cents on it.
Yeah, it's a good question, and I agree completely with Andrew. When you have a community, by definition, these people are raising their hand and volunteering to answer questions or participate in conversations or attend events. This is the best engagement you can possibly ask for. People who care enough to spend their time with your product or service beyond just using it. And so to me, this level of engagement is now being seen by go-to-market leaders as one of the through lines across the entirety of the customer journey, whether it's awareness, engagement, advocacy. Community can play a role in all of them, rather than, I think in times past, community was thought as an adjunct to support. it was, and it still can be that, but it can be so much more. And I think smart go-to-market leaders are really recognizing the potential for how community can really help people build trust, peer-based influence, and really be a nice counterpart to the world of AI, which can feel very human adjacent, by injecting a lot of humanity back into it via community. So I think there's a huge opportunity right now, maybe even more so than in recent times, to really engage community in a way that can enhance all areas of the go-to-market function.
Great insight. When your GTM motion is shaped by community insights, growth happens more naturally. So, Josh and Andrew, my next question to you is, how do you activate communities from testing to launch and keep them driving demand and growth long after?
Maybe I can start first. I personally have seen that if you engage community the right way throughout the entirety of a launch cycle, let's say, you can really magnify and have a force amplifier for everything that happens within the entirety of the launch. So for example, engaging community members before a product is launched, all the way at the beginning when you're just exploring a feature as an idea, getting their input, their feedback, their enthusiasm about what you're building can be meaningfully impactful on even the product design cycle. And then as you continue beyond there into testing and then launch, you can engage community all along the path. So for instance, if you have an ambassador program or even people that you've identified as being really engaged, you can engage them at the very beginning and say, we're thinking of building this feature, this service. What do you think about it? What's your input? We'd like to shape it alongside you. Then as you get closer to launch and you say, okay, we've taken your feedback, you give them behind the scenes access, here's what we've built. And now that we're getting ready to launch, here are some assets, tools, and resources that you as a community member can use to amplify this launch within your network and beyond. And so from the very beginning all the way through to getting something out into the wild, community plays a really important role in making sure that it's authentically what customers need and want. And when they're excited about it, they can help you promote it.
Yeah, but I would say I agree 100% with Josh and everything he said. People want to be involved, honestly. If they're taking the time to become active members of your community, just think about people joining your community and you get somebody that's fairly new to your product coming in to become a community member, and then somebody who's been in there for a while, actually taking time out of their day. It's not part of their job, due to your responsibility, but they're engaged enough where they see new people coming in, asking questions, they're answering questions for that user. So that is a highly engaged customer. And if people want to be involved in the process, they want to be involved in the product evolution, they want to be involved in testing, they want to be involved in product ideation. And this is your best opportunity to activate the voice of the customer, and then to really turn that customer from just a customer into a brand advocate and a future champion of your business. So everything from messaging to onboarding flows to value proposition, testing of new features. I mean, this is like instant gratification. We have access to this incredible user base and wealth of knowledge that exists within the community. So it would be pretty, I would say, not smart. It would be unwise to not engage your community and to wait until after launch. So getting that process started pre-launch is the way to go. You think of the community as sort of a pre-launch lab that's going to help you to garner a lot more success in the future.
Exactly. And that brings me to the most in-demand question that every C-suite eventually asks. How do we measure community impact? Because as programs mature, the conversation inevitably shifts from engagement to attribution. Josh, from your experience, how can GTM leaders connect community activity to pipeline, revenue, and overall GTM outcomes?
Yeah, I think it's both simple and difficult at the same time. Simple because you want to measure the same things that the rest of a go-to-market function measures, so that you're speaking the same language from a community perspective as your sales, your revenue teams, et cetera, are. So when I've done this in the past, we look at things like pipeline influence or directly associated revenue with community. So how many deals, for instance, a community member touches, or um, the speed with which a community influence deal closes as compared to baseline deals. So pipeline, all the things that you would measure normally, you look at also from the community influenced angle. I also in the past have looked at things like difference in paid versus non-paid accounts. If you're using like a freemium model, for instance, like what's the difference between a community associated domain or customer versus one that isn't? And then on the more end of the cycle, like retention, adoption, etc., you can also look at the differentials between community associated customers and ones who are not. And in my experience, when you look at those numbers cumulatively over time, in every case that I've looked at least, I'm not saying this is universal, but there's a delta between community associated and non that's usually very difficult to ignore. And so I'm very careful when talking about tracking metrics. It's very difficult to say that there's a direct causation between community doing something or someone being engaged in the community and result other than maybe a community source lead. But when you have enough data, you can show a very strong correlation between community activities and these good results that all of us across the business want. And so because it isn't directly causative, that doesn't mean it shouldn't be ignored. The signals that come from community are useful across the entirety of the customer journey. And so I think proving it out is simple in that you want to align your metrics with everyone else's across the board. The difficult part is connecting all the data dots in a way that makes sense. And so that's where typically a community leader really needs to have buy-in from senior executives on making sure that there's resources from data ops, marketing ops, sales ops, and analytics to help make sure that that through line is able to be shown effectively. Because without it, then you're constantly reporting on things like, well, here's how many people attended an event, and here are the pictures we got of them at an event, and they all look happy. That's where we go into the so what that most executives will ask at some point. You don't want to be there as a community leader. You want to be able to show and prove the results.
Yeah,
Perfect. I think that's a great way to frame it, Josh. Yeah, Andrew, what's your take on how GTM leaders should show the real business impact of communities across marketing, product, and customer success?
Yeah, I mean, sorry, I'm laughing a little bit. Just what Josh says. This is the age-old community struggle that all of us in the community space. And I was in community for probably 13 years or so, and just it is an age-old problem and a question and a struggle that we all deal with. But it's also that something that we all strive to achieve is figure out how does community impact the key business outcomes, key business metrics, things like annual recurring revenue and product adoption and retention and churn rates, decreasing in churn rates and, reducing support case volume and costs to the business. But the most, it's nearly impossible. Yes, you have things like Josh said, people look happy in these pictures. That's all great. Or how many posts were there in a community? How many questions were asked? How many likes? How many page views? I mean, honestly, that stuff doesn't matter a whole lot. That's more of a sort of secondary impact to having a successful community. So not something that's really worth measuring. But what is worth measuring is how community is tied directly to pipeline, retention, expansion. And the problem becomes, how do you do that? How do you measure it? And it's getting buy-in from the right people in order to make that happen. And I was really fortunate in my last organization to have the direct support from my chief data scientist and my data insights team. Both of whom, before, and I was putting it together, I was working with my team to look at all the different community touch points, and we identified 60 or 70 different touch points. And we sat down, we sort of measured the impact of each of those, everything from, somebody that submitted a post, created a blog post, to maybe somebody who started taking some of the courses in the LMS, or they got certified, or they attended a user group, all these different things, help submit a product idea. Looking at each of those and figuring out, what is the overall level of effort here, and what's the impact? And then doing all of the mapping with my data scientist team and my data insights team, and then literally figuring out with their genius and support, how does that affect ARR? How does that affect product adoption? How does it affect retention and churn and customer penetration? And yes, it's more about causation. and you can make inferences. But when you look at things like the benchmark customers who are not involved, not participating in community, or they are participating but their levels of engagement are really low, we were measuring all levels of engagement from 0% to 100% engagement, depending on how active they were. And all the data, even historical data compared to the data of the active users, was markedly different. So, you know, I was able to measure a 24% increase in ARR growth among mid-level engaged community members, 200% increase in product adoption, 300% reduction in churn, 55% increase in customer penetration. And these are substantial numbers that cause a big increase in revenue and reduce costs overall. So it's not easy, but if you have the right support and the right team, and then that then becomes data that you can then bring back to your marketing team, to your sales team, and say, hey, sales leader, this is what I'm showing. I'm actually making your job easier. I now need your support to go out and make sure that all of your customers are aware of all these great resources that exist within the community to get them involved and get them engaged. And then you start to increase the number of customer champions, and it just continues to grow from there. So it's not an easy thing to achieve, but it is absolutely essential. And if you can get the support you need, then you know you're gonna make a huge impact on the business.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. Thank you for sharing all of that, Andrew, because like I've seen it's all but boils down to the level of executive support you have. If you have support, you get the tools, the resources, the connection you need to prove out the value of what you're doing. I think on the face of it, there's very few people, executives included, who are like anti-community. But when it comes down to making the tough business decisions, having all that data that you just mentioned and being able to show those results is make or break for many programs in most cases. And it's funny to me because community is often one of the least well-resourced parts of an organization, yet it's the one that's often most close, like in proximity to the most engaged customers. And I can't think of another organization within a company that has that strange dichotomy of we're right there with customers, the ones that really are raising their hands and really care, but often are staffed by someone really junior with no experience prior to leading this particular community and have no resources at their disposal. And I think it takes a smart executive to really understand these are the most important people that we have. These are our most engaged customers. Let's make sure we're connecting the dots to show the impact.
And I'll make one last comment. I mean, we are moving in the right direction. Because when I got started in community, yes, I was a one-person operation, and I finally got a second person on my team, and it did help a substantial amount. But as I continued to evolve in the space, then I had teams and even large. Then I had organizations. You know, I had maybe 15 plus people that were under my part of the business. So there was an investment there, and I think we didn't dive in head first and start to measure all these numbers. We started small and tried to show the impacts of what community was doing. And it wasn't just for the business, but it was also for the team members. The team members wanted to know, how does my work impact the growth of the business? And by showing them in little bits, in little bites, little sizes, then it motivates them. Because people want to know how they're working. Why does their work matter? What are they doing? How does it impact the business? How does it impact growth? When the CEO comes out and says, okay, these are our goals for the year, we need to hit these numbers. That person on my team wants to know, how am I helping to impact those numbers? I'm concerned about job security. I mean, you see the layoffs in the tech industry has been unprecedented for the last 3 to 5 years, I guess. Maybe it's not that long, but feels like it's been that long. They want to know what their impact is, and they want to be able to prove their value to the business. And this is a great way to prove their value, but also prove the value of the community program in general, and to help the entire organization and to get everybody on board by showing them the numbers. So I think the data is super critical. And it's, Josh, it's obviously had success in it. I've had success in it. We would love to be able to connect people offline if necessary and help them achieve the same outcomes.
Well, those were some incredible perspectives from both of you. Now we have to move forward. So Josh and Andrew, as AI amplifies community intelligence and personalization, what does the next generation of GTM strategies for communities look like? A question for both of you again.
Maybe I can start this one. I think it's going to be a balance of using AI, automation, and data to provide members with a personalized experience. Maybe that means they get customized content, or they're being directed towards specific in-community conversations, or etc., to really help them answer the questions that they have and have the experiences that they might be most interested in. But I think at the end of it, there's still the human-to-human connection. The AI can help them connect to the things that they're interested in, but when they get there, there are people waiting to chat with them, talk with them, meet with them, share ideas with them. And so I think the next iteration of all of the work that we do in community is going to be striking this balance, which frankly, none of us know exactly what that will look like yet, but leveraging some of the tools and data, especially for community, that we just haven't had the access to because so much of community work has been totally, utterly manual for such a long time. The tools that are in play now and are coming in the future are going to make that a lot easier. So achieving scale, achieving customization, and really experiential opportunities for members is going to be made easier, paired with that human-to-human connection.
Yeah, I agree as well. It's definitely been interesting to see the continued evolution of communities, and now AI is sort of touching everything. And I think that the next generation certainly looks like go-to-market is absolutely community-led, not sort of a community as an adjacent to your go-to-market strategy. Community becomes, like we talked about, so that validation hub, the messaging truth, the adoption driver, the origin of advocacy. It really is. It is go-to-market. It is the decision-making engine. It's where our intelligence, our data, is coming from that we can use to make informed decisions based on actual customer data, not hypothetical or not implied or theoretical data. It's data it's real, coming from real customers. In terms of the AI stuff, I had some notes I was taking. So, the way I was using AI lightly in my last organization, in a couple of key areas, I think it helps a lot with personalization, the right content for the right user at the right time, the messaging for the different types of users depending on the user persona, making sure that they've got the right resources and that information is being surfaced better for that particular user, not just like all of your customers are not always looking for the same thing at all times. So you want to be able to personalize that information. I think what it definitely does is it certainly helps to speed up a lot of things that, as Josh said, were very manual in the past. So it helps to guide you and provide you with the data and the intelligence much faster than if you had to do it without the use of AI. But it's not in replacement of the human-to-human element. That's the most important part of community, is not losing that, the human trust. Humans trust humans, and that's going to continue forever. I don't think that's ever going to be replaced certainly not by AI. And it just becomes, I had some other some of the key things around this. This is a good one. So community-powered, AI-enabled, human-centered, data-proven, and a revenue driver. So that's kind of the final thing. It's about living and coexisting with AI, using and leveraging AI where AI is appropriate, where it can add value, but always maintaining that human connection and human-to-human connection where we can all grow together and drive growth for the business.
Yeah, I think so too. I think one of the things that I'm looking forward to AI actually helping with is what, in my experience, many community builders are loath to do, which is surface the community-centered insights to partner teams. Like sales would do so well to find out all the conversations, all the touch points that are happening within community. But for a community builder or a leader, to surface those insights, because a lot of that data isn't typically connected behind the scenes, that's a lot of manual work. So I'm looking forward to AI tools that help other stakeholder teams really understand what's happening within community and how it can positively impact their work. Everything from product development all the way through to success, sales, marketing, support, and beyond. Every single part of those touch points has a community element in there, if only they could see it. And I'm hoping that one of the big developments that come from all this AI being injected into our work is that that's one of the outcomes, is that part is made easier.
Yeah, and there's a last point is there's so much when it comes to leading indicators and predictors of behavior in the future. And this is before, like a lot of time in my last organization, again, because I had access to some very smart people, much smarter than I am, and we're interested in what I was doing enough to start diving in their phone before I asked to partner with them. But we would see behaviors that were early indicators of potential churn. And this is before product adoption. So product adoption would obviously be a later indicator that somebody is starting to disengage. But there are behaviors that we could look historically, because we have all this data in community and we have access to their accounts and see what happened with previous accounts. When we see other accounts start to peel away and lose interest or start to disengage, we can see those same behaviors of other customers, because all of the digital footprint that they leave in communities is an indicator for future behavior. And getting a grasp on that and providing the various teams with customized playbooks on how to address those issues before they become a churn situation is super important. I think that's probably also where we're headed, to make some of that a little bit less manually intensive, to get access to that information, but to do it in an automated way.
Well, thank you both for your perspectives. It's a world where humans and AI coexist now, and you have painted a clear picture. The next era of community in GTM will be predictive, connected, and deeply operational. Teams that blend insights and data can predict needs, reduce churn, and move faster in the market. To everyone joining us, we appreciate your time and attention. Enjoy the rest of the event. Thank you.
Thanks, everybody.
Appreciate everyone. Thanks so much. Have a great day.
Thank you, everyone. I am sure that was packed with all the actionable insights that our audience was looking for. I especially liked how Josh and Andrew talked about using communities to test messaging before a launch. How simple, but a powerful idea. Let's now head to the next session on communities that convert, transforming the customer lifecycle.